Good afternoon everyone. It's a wonderful day here in South Africa on Kapama Private Game Reserve. So this afternoon I'd like to talk to you about termites and the termite mounds. So here you can see we have a pile of soil, but in fact it's hollow in the middle. And there's another one over there and there's one here behind me. So what these termites are doing with these mounds is they're creating an air conditioning system to keep the colony at a nice temperature, a perfect temperature. So you'll notice that this tower or this chimney is higher than the other chimneys around it. So what that does is that you have air moving faster up here than you have air moving down here. So you have air moving across this taller chimney, pulling the warm, stale air out of the colony, and then the fresh air being pulled in to the lower chimneys, and it ends up with an air circulation. And this then keeps the temperature and humidity, a nice temperature and humidity for the termites, because these termites grow a fungus, and this fungus can only grow at a certain temperature and humidity. And the termites are always renovating and always expanding their colony. As the colony gets bigger, so do the tunnels and so do these chimneys, and more chimneys will appear. So they're constantly renovating their colonies. Another interesting thing about this one is on this chimney here, you can see that it's darker than that chimney over there, because small animals like warthog, for example, probably the only one that'll get down to this height, the warthog will roll in the mud somewhere, then come along and rub itself on the chimney of the termite mound to get rid of the mud and any parasites that are stuck in the mud. And you'll not only see this on termite chimneys, but you'll see it on branches, you'll see it on trees, logs, rocks, and animals will use these places so often, like with trees, they will use it repeatedly, that they'll end up smoothing that tree off. It's almost like someone's taken 1,000 grit sandpaper and smoothed it, and it's as smooth as a table in your house. There's another log over there that I can see the animals have been using as a scratching post. So the warthogs use this as a scratching post. You won't have rhinos rubbing against a chimney of this size, but a big mound that's maybe standing 1.5 meters, rhinos will use it to rub on, elephants will use it to rub on, buffalo will use it to rub on. So it's typically all the animals that roll around in the mud, like elephants, rhinos, buffalo, warthogs. Those are the 4 animals that tend to wallow in the mud to remove external parasites from their skin. It also keeps them cool, also protects them a little bit from the sun, and in some cases, like with the warthogs and the elephants and the rhinos, it's just good fun to play in the mud. Here we have the saddlebill stork standing in the water, minding its own business, preening itself. So for birds, preening is an essential part of day-to-day life, because without preening the feathers will deteriorate, they may become waterlogged. The feathers for the bird are its insulation to keep it warm in the cold of the night, and the preening then spreads an oil that comes from what's called a preening gland, and that's just above the tail. The bird will rub its beak in this preening gland and then spread the oils all along the feathers to coat the feathers in a bit of an oil layer to keep the bird waterproof. Also by preening, it removes dead feathers. It can pull those feathers out. So with the preening, the bird removes any of the old feathers, because birds are constantly molting, replacing these feathers. Just like we do as humans, we shed hair to replace it with the new ones. You'll see this on your couch when your dog sleeps on your couch. All the little dog hairs lying on the couch is because the animals are moving from one coat into another, typically before the winter, because now they're putting on their winter coat, and then after the winter the animals will be going into their summer coat. The birds will do the same thing, but not because of the seasons, but because the feathers have expired. They've been worn out, and the birds will replace it eventually. So when you see these birds flying, you may see a gap in the wing. That's just a feather that has fallen out and will be replaced soon. So they don't lose all their feathers at the same time. they lose them in stages, because if the birds were to lose all their feathers at the same time, they wouldn't be able to fly. So it's one feather typically moving from the inside out. So one feather falls out, gets replaced, the next feather falls out, gets replaced, the next one, and so on and so on. Incredible, beautiful birds. There we go. It's preening itself. And with these birds being a pair, they will even preen each other. It builds the relationship. It strengthens the relationship between the two individuals. Now, when it comes to the mating season, this process starts long before the eggs are even laid. The male will go and find food and nesting material just to prove to his mate that he's capable of doing these things, capable of finding food for her when she's on the nest, and then also capable of finding food for the chick when the egg hatches, and then he will bring food for the chick. The female will then also leave the nest, go forage for food once the egg is hatched. But when the female's on the nest, the male does most of the foraging for food to bring it to the female. And in some species of birds, even the male will take over the incubating of the eggs. So the female can go off and feed, stretch her legs, stretch her wings. She'll then come back and take over from the male. Right folks, so here we have a tree that's been pushed over, more than likely by elephants. Evidence isn't pushing towards elephants. It could be a tree that has just died and has fallen over on itself, or a strong wind blew it over. But more than likely, in the area that we are, with there being elephants, there's a good chance that the elephants pushed it over. Okay, so with the elephants pushing the tree over, it's so that the smaller little elephants can get to the top of the tree where the tree grows. That's the good rich nutrients of the leaves of the tree. Elephants will also push over trees to get to the roots, especially in the winter, because the tree will store its nutrients in the roots as a storage unit. For when the spring comes, the tree can then pull those nutrients out of the roots and then start with the budding of the new leaves in our springtime. So the roots are rich in nutrients for the trees and for the elephants. Also, with elephants pushing the tree over, it allows that the smaller animals like the dakish, the impala, the kudu can now get to a food source they wouldn't otherwise be able to get to. So the elephants have brought it to their level. Instead of being a giraffe that can reach it at any height, maximum of about 5 meters. So now the impala can feed from this tree, and the little antelope and the kudus can now feed from a tree, especially in an area that's very arid. In the winter where there's not much to graze and all the browsing has been finished at certain heights, the elephants will push these trees over, providing food for these other animals. Now, more specifically about what's happening here with this tree. It has now died because it's been uprooted. There's no more nutrients, so the tree has died. There's not growing anything, it's not going to regrow, it's not going to survive. Eventually this tree will completely decompose over time. But it'll provide nutrients for everything else that is growing underneath it. So you'll see that there are smaller plants growing between the branches. Here's a little tree growing from it. There's grass growing here. So this will then provide a seed bank, because many of the plants, like grasses, will disperse their seeds with the wind. The wind blows, picks up the seeds, and when the wind blows through the branches of this fallen tree, the seeds slow down and they fall to the ground, and then they germinate. With the decomposition of the tree, that nutrients goes back into the soil, which then the grass can use to grow better. And being under a tree, it's providing protection from those that are grazers, like rhinos, zebras, buffalo, wildebeest. They're not going to come and push this tree around just to get to the fresh grass that is growing here. You'll also have a myriad of different species of animals, not big ones, but the small guys, like scorpions, will come onto the branches of the trees to do their hunting. You'll have snakes coming here looking for little rodents that have come to feed on the seeds. You'll have little antelopes coming and sleeping under these trees where it's nice and protected. You'll have birds come and sleep under these trees. You'll have hares, which look very much like a rabbit, will use these places to sleep at night. You'll have wood-boring beetles lay their eggs on the branches, and then their larvae will bore into the wood and feed on the wood and help break down this tree into the nutrients and make it smaller and easier for everything to absorb the nutrients. With the wood-boring beetles, you have birds like woodpeckers come along and bore out the larva of the wood boring beetle and feed on the grubs. So just by one animal, the elephant, pushing over a tree, has now created a little micro ecosystem for everything, right from scorpions, snakes, spiders, little antelopes, small birds, insects. Even the grass itself will grow in this little micro environment. And if you have enough of these been pushed over, it will encourage more grass growth in an area that is overgrazed, which then will hold the soil in place, so that when it does rain, that topsoil doesn't get washed away by the rain. And with the grass growing better here, it might spread out further and hold the soil in place, so that in future that more grass can grow, which then encourages more animals that are the grazers, like the zebras, the wildebeests, the rhinos, the zebras, the buffalo, will come in and graze on grass. Just because an elephant came along and pushed this tree over, it has a long-term knock-on effect for the rest of the ecosystem.